Near mint condition, the home of collected editions. Oh my gosh, look at that panel of Batman. You have the absolute, you have the deluxe. DC Comics firing on all cylinders. It is finally here. I am the Uncanny Omar. You are watching Near Mint Condition. And today, it is my absolute pleasure to get to talk about one of my most anticipated Omnis of the year, The Spectre by John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake Omnibus Volume 1 from DC Comics. So let's take a look at this amazing series together. Welcome back, everyone. So here we have the latest DC Omnibus, and it is The Spectre by John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake. Volume 1. I love to see that Volume 1 there. We have this new cover by none other than Tom Mandrake and Sean Mandrake. Let's look at the spine here. The Spectre by John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake, Omnibus Volume 1. The DC logo down there. And then this image, the 90s horror masterpiece collected in omnibus form for the first time. And oh my gosh, it is way overdue. But for a time when DC wasn't even giving us more than one Superman omnibus or one Batman omnibus a year, it was well worth the wait. I know a lot of my viewers have been curious about this series and this book, but with a name like John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake, you can't go wrong. I hyped it up a little bit in my intro, and I apologize for that. Sometimes I can't help myself. Usually my viewers that have been watching me for a long time know when I'm super excited about something, even though I try to stay neutral about Omnis or collected editions in general. But it is an amazing series, and one that is overlooked. We've had it collected in 2 trade paperbacks before, and sadly, that ended. Like, we were supposed to get a third and got canceled from the catalog. One of the coolest things about the design of this omnibus, by the way, the omnibus does retail for $125, I forgot to mention that, is the dust jacket itself. But before we look at the dust jacket, let's take a closer look at the images here on the art on board. We have this image here. I think this is Phil Winsdale, if I'm not mistaken. That is so creepy. That was one of my favorite things about this era too, were the covers. And then this creepy, amazing image by Martin Emmond. Kind of looking a little bit like Apocalypse there. And that is the art on board. And then again, this image, which we have here, looking a little bit different. The tone's looking a little bit different. And I'll show you why exactly when we're talking about the dust jacket. The dust jacket actually glows in the dark. They actually did it. That's why it feels so different. Every single side of the dust jacket glows in the dark. That is so cool. Now, I don't know if you sleep next to your Omnis in the middle of the night. You might get freaked out, but that is well worth it. Very, very cool. Now, let's look at the flaps over here. I will show you the face of fear. I will show you the nature of hell. Damn, Spectre. John Ostrander, Tom Mandrake, the bio on those two gentlemen. Now, this is the second Spectre Omnibus. Here it is with my first printing of the Wrath of the Spectre. And there were some other series in between here, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. So, let's actually go ahead and open this up. Talk about the type of stories found in here, and of course, check out the art, and check out the extras in the back, which are really cool extras, I think, and then, of course, the build of the book. Let's go ahead and get this opened. We have these black end sheets, and your title page, The Spectre by John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake, Omnibus Volume 1, and that image by, of course, Tom Mandrake, as well as this one over here, who, of course, did a majority of the book. Now, the top billing, John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake, of course. But there's also all these other folks that helped with the art, like John Ridgway, like Kelly Jones, and Dennis Kramer, and more importantly, to me at least, Jim Aparo. Oh my gosh, Jim Aparo coming back to this character. We have Carla Feeney and Digital Chameleon as the colorist, and Todd Klein doing the lettering, and of course the collection cover artist, which I talked about already, The Spectre created by Jerry Siegel and Bernard Bailey, and Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. And your table of contents, starting with the introduction, and what is collected in here in a wonderful reading order, because they put issue 0 right before the, I guess, what I at least consider the penultimate story that's collected in here. And then we kick it off with this introduction. So collecting the Spectre 0 through 31 is what's in this omnibus. The book has a total of 888 pages and retails for $125. All right, here we have a beautiful and wonderful introduction by none other than John Ostrander. I learned a couple of things here. This is why I love introductions. By the way, I would read this introduction in case you haven't read the Spectre, any of this 90 series, after you've read at least the first 12 issues, because while it's wonderful to go and look at what's happening behind the scenes, there are a couple of things that I think that could spoil maybe one of the biggest plot points in the first 12 issues for you. So I hate to give that away because of an introduction. It's a beautiful introduction, by the way. I learned that Jander Sema and Tom Mandrake are married. I had no idea. Jander Sema has been a huge part of the industry for over, I'm probably underselling her, but I think at least 3 decades, at the very, almost 4 decades. And of course, Tom has been a big part of the industry for a long time. It is a wonderful introduction, also giving credit to the editors at the time, including assistant editor Peter Tomasi, some of his earliest work at DC Comics. So we kick it off with issue number 1, and yes, that was a glow-in-the-dark cover, if you remember, which is why a lot of us bought it. Damn, those gimmicky covers. Love it. And we kick it off with this first issue, reintroducing us to the character of Jim Corrigan. Jim Corrigan's a little bit different during this era. We've had several incarnations of the Spectre. As a matter of fact, just 3 years before this, there was the Doug Mensch series, and that didn't sell that well, and the introduction talks about that. Why the editors didn't want to give us a Spectre series, because they thought it just wasn't going to sell well. He's too overpowered. So both him and Tom got together and decided to change a few things. This introduces us to a couple of characters here. We have this is the hospital's social worker. This is Amy Biederman. And then we have this inspector who will play a big part in here. And this is Louis Snipe, not Spine, sorry. Louis Snipe, who's a character from the lore of Spectre, going all the way back to more fun comics from the 40s, but making a reappearance here as an old man. And what's happening is that the Spectre is visiting him. First is Jim Corrigan, and then the Spectre, and telling him to tell him his secrets. Now, it will tie it in exactly towards the end as to why he wants to know his secrets and why he's going specifically after that guy. And then there's a gang shootout outside, and the Spectre gets involved, and Amy witnesses the powers of the Spectre firsthand. And for some reason, she's kind of attracted to it, not really scared of the Spectre's powers. We also get to meet this inspector right here, Inspector Nate Kane, who will play a big part in this entire series right here. And we have the coming of this new villain, the Reaver. This is a guy that goes around killing women, but it's specifically who he's going after, and that will become a big part of the storyline through here. The reason he went after the character of Louis Snipe is because Louis Snipe is one of the people that killed Jim Corrigan when he was a cop and put him in a cement barrel, and he wanted to know his secrets. He wanted to know why exactly he did it, and of course become the spirit of vengeance and cause wrath as this character of Louis Snipe is dying. And that's what the Spectre does. So within the first issue, you get to meet Jim Corrigan, the Spectre, his alter ego, and exactly what he does to a group of different people, and even somebody that has been a part of his life since the 40s. We have these amazing covers through here. The first 6 issues, we are reintroduced to another character too, and that is Madame Xanadu. As a matter of fact, Madame Xanadu shares, I guess, a working building, like their office building. He's upstairs, she's downstairs. He's more like a private detective with the occult, while, of course, Madame Xanadu plays with the occult. Demons through here, by the way, and demons, female demons have nipples, so if you're offended by that, just saying, you know, maybe skip this one? I don't know. Everybody can tolerate different things, and I never know what's the breaking point for different people. But anyway, yes, female demon nipples in here. Female human nipples, not so much. But anyway, Amy starts developing feelings for this bad boy, Jim Corrigan, and he's like, no, you got to stay away from me. You don't know who I am. You don't know what I can do. But she's like, I don't really care. I want to know more about you. So she experiences the things that he experiences. There's a name that he throws out there named Clarice. And Clarice will become a big part of this flashback. So even if you're not familiar with the Spectre, horrific imagery through here, by the way, this will catch you up to speed with what he's been up to, who he is, and the differences between Jim Corrigan and him. And Jim, through the beginning here, really doesn't want to be connected with the Spectre. You get a small hint that perhaps there could have been other Spectres, and that does get talked about through here. There's a journey to hell for the soul of somebody that shouldn't be there because they went there for the wrong reasons. And again, amazing artwork like this throughout the entire book. Now, the guy that I talked about in the first issue, the Reaver that made his first appearance in that first issue, he does come to play later on and becomes a big part of the second issue while the Spectre's out there getting wrath, getting revenge for all those spirits that have gone. And who he's targeting are people with AIDS, people with HIV. And it's a comic book that came out in 1990. I think this is 1993 by the time we get to the second story arc. And it was pretty unheard of. You know, we had characters like in Peter David's run of the Hulk, but this is a villain that sees that he is righteous by doing away with people that have AIDS and so they don't spread it anymore. Again, every villain is a hero in their story, right? But one of my favorite things, I have to go back and look at, just show you this, because everybody sees themselves a little bit different. Like this guy right here sees himself as like a Conan the Barbarian type of character. So when he goes into his dream and his secrets, that's what he sees. So let's keep going through here. And again, absolutely stunning freaking covers throughout this era. And eventually we will get the fight between him and other gods, like Asmodeus, that's his name. It's this other, this guy right here. So you'll see this big fight happening with him and how gods affect the lives of men and just what role exactly the character of the Spectre plays in all of this, especially in the storyline of the righteousness, whenever you have him going through some grief and how he deals with grief. Jim Corrigan and, of course, the Spectre, how they deal with grief differently and wiping away an entire country, too, because he doesn't see the good. And that's where the whole Asmodeus comes from. That's where Vertigo shows up. Count Vertigo, if you're familiar with the JSA. But it really becomes an interesting story that I did not see coming, especially for a 90s comic like this. That wasn't quite Vertigo. It was just a DC comic, but there are so many Vertigo-like tropes in here that if you're reading this for the first time, you could totally see this working as a Vertigo title. We have the Eclipso storyline that this is for the first time showcases us perhaps there were other Spectres at different times, that there have been other incarnations, that it wasn't just Jim Corrigan. And as we've come to find out that is true. We have this amazing team up in this issue right here. Let me just show you the cover. I just love these covers. By the way, most of the covers are completely textless, and that is because a lot of them were painted, so it's original work. But yes, this you'll see a huge team up, not just with Etrigan, Jason Blood, the demon, but also Dr. Fate. And during this time, Dr. Fate, because of things that were happening in Dr. Fate's comic, it was Inza Nelson. And that happened towards the end of that Dr. Fate trade paperback. I hope we keep getting more of those, and eventually we'll get some kind of omnibus of that collection. Just killer artwork, Truman. And then that's what the Eclipso storyline shows us. It shows us the dark side of the Spectre. It shows us what he can do. And again, like, is the Spectre allowed to do these things? Is God letting the Spectre do this? Or will there be some kind of reckoning if the Spectre just shows how much power he actually has over humanity and what he can do with those the lost souls that he goes after? He'll end up fighting different elementals and demons through here. And this is, actually, these are the characters of Hawkman and Hawkwoman. And there are some throwbacks to the JSA in here, like the early era of the JSA that, oh my gosh, I just love the JSA. And it makes sense because the Spectre was a member. All right, let's talk about this issue right here. Oh my gosh, Jim Aparo returning to this character. And if you have the first omnibus, you know that he drew the Spectre early on. One of my favorite artists of all time. And also inked by Kelly Jones at this time. And it shows the Spectre traveling to Ireland for a very specific storyline, and there's a reason why he's there. Again, Madame Xanadu playing a huge important part through here. We have the Spear of Destiny story. This one really focusing on Superman. It really feels more like a Superman comic than a Spectre comic. Now, the next issue in here is issue number 0. And we've already seen the origin of Jim Corrigan. We've seen even his, a friend of his will make a return. But this is the origin of the Spectre. Like the actual being, the Spectre, how he came to be, because he's, Ostrander had hinted that there were other incarnations of the Spectre, that there were other hosts, that Jim Corrigan wasn't the first, and he won't be the last. And this will show you who the Spectre is, and where the actual spirit of vengeance came from. And that all happens in issue 0. It is a very cool issue to do that with, because it was a forced crossover. And in the, I think it's, no, it's in the afterwards. Oh, the afterwards is so cool. There are fill-in issues in here. This one focusing on his buddy. Right here, a police officer from the 40s that was a friend of his that shows back up and recognizes Jim Corrigan. And again, fighting off demons and leading into the next story arc in here, which is the desecration is the last one in here. With Tom Mandrake doing a majority of the arc and Madame Xanadu playing a huge important part in this final story that is collected in here. And you'll get to witness the type of character that Jim Corrigan is. So that character that we saw earlier on, Asmodeus, returns later on for this huge fight. And this is Madame Xanadu preparing for this big fight that is to come, as New York City is about to witness the battle between the Spectre and Asmodeus for the last time. Right. There's no way they don't bring that character back. But it ends with issue 31, and then we get to the extras. This is some of my favorite things that DC is doing with Omnis. It's the Visions of the Spectre. We saw something very similar in the Suicide Squad Omnibus. This is where we have the writer kind of go back and talk about each and every one of these stories. And that is amazing, because somebody with a memory like this, like to actually write them down and, you know, have these stories published is one thing, but then separating yourself 30 plus years from these stories, not going back. I assume John Ostrander doesn't have the time to go back and reread a lot of his stuff. It's amazing that this exists, that he goes back with detailed information, why he decided to do a certain storyline. When you get to issue number 0, you'll see what I was talking about when he says the crossovers can be narrative or thematic, but I have already done the origin of Jim Corrigan and the how him and the Spectre got together. So he was kind of put in a corner to do that origin of the Spectre. And he goes through every single issue, some a little bit bigger than others. He talks about working with Jim Aparo, and of course his work with Tom Mandrake. And then sometimes why they decided to go a different route with a storyline. Bringing the Spectre to life. This is sketches from Tom Mandrake. And then some of the main characters here, like Kane and Amy Bitterman and Asmodeus. The rough cover sketch and concept sketches for issue number 1. Pencils for the Spectre issue 1. And the glow-in-the-dark layer for issue number 8 right there. The glow-in-the-dark issue. I thought issue 1 had the glow-in-the-dark. Was I... Why? I know I picked up issue 1 before. It wasn't issue 8 that brought me to the series. Original inks for a house ad promoting the glow-in-the-dark cover to Spectre 8. I guess issue 8 was the glow-in-the-dark. And then the omnibus covers and final ink color without the glow-in-the-dark effect. I love the fact that we even have the DC Direct figure here, and then the bio on John Ostrander, Tom Mandrake, and your end sheets. Now let's take a look at the build. 888 pages, not that big of an eye. A lot of that has to do with the excess glue they have down there. This is sewn binding, and it lays over pretty good too. So this is the 90s, and there were some double page spreads like this. So when you saw that binding, let's see here, you do have minimal gutter loss happening here. But that is what the Spectre by John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake Omnibus is. And here's hoping for that volume 2 to be right around the corner. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in this book, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcon at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget, the CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus. In the comments down below, let me know what other 90s era comic are you excited to get or one day will be collected in an omnibus format. Or even what other Spectre series? Would you like the Hal Jordan era, the series that predated this? And what other obscure DC character, but you can't really call the Spectre obscure anymore. He's been in the animated series and he's got 2 Omnis and a DC Finest. No way is he obscure anymore. But that is it, everybody. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.